You can try it out. If it works for that, we should be okay. Yeah, I guess that should pick up everything. Yeah, it seemed like this one. Yeah, we're live right now, Mike.
We're live right now.
And the audio's on, so.
It's not Memorex. It's not Memorex. So, if there's people are there already people online? Can they hear me?
They can.
They can. So they're like, yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, we hear you.
Well. Hello.
Are you out there, world?
Yeah, I don't know if Aaron's coming or not. I guess we'll just get started. So we're kind of just doing a live stream, and we're going to talk about some of the components that we like to use in some of our builds and take questions both on the internet and from people here, because I know everybody has a lot of interest in this, and it's pretty cool stuff, and we're lucky to get to do it every day. So, do we have any questions yet, Roy?
Not really any questions yet. No.
Everybody's just still like, when are they gonna start? They're late. Yeah, I had to work, so it sucked. Oh yeah, do we have a PowerPoint? Yeah, we got this cool screen, so we can do
I would like to get
images. A what?
Apparently your stalker said you finally got a haircut.
You didn't get an M8 head yet? They what?
Your stalker said you finally got a haircut.
Yeah.
And they're looking for the Taliban guy.
Well, you know, he got detained, so they're trying to check his visa. Oh well. Go team. Well, you know, it's hard when we're like in the middle of work and we got to break away. So I guess we could just start with kind of the basics. You know, when you're doing any kind of a performance build, the first thing you need to do is decide what it is that you are trying to accomplish. And a lot of people come and they say, I want the most horsepower I can get, and they absolutely don't want that. They actually want a real strong torque curve in the rideable area, which is between 2,500 and 4,500 RPMs. And the numbers really don't matter as much as how it feels on the road, because everywhere that you go and get your bike dynoed, it's going to be a different number. Some are higher and some are lower. And go ahead. This is your show, so. So that's usually what we do first, is we decide what kind of riding you do, whether you go light to light, whether you really just want a drag race, or if you're going to do cross country or a combination of both, if you ride two up in the mountains. You know, we have a lot of people that come and they have baggers and they like to go places with their wives and their friends, and they're just riding on the highway and they just want to be able to twist the throttle and pass a car without downshifting. So on a Milwaukee 8, that's a great opportunity for like an SNS 465 cam or a Redshift 468. All the power is going to be in the lower end of the spectrum, so it's real usable, and you don't have to redline it to really feel it push you back in the seat. What is that contraption?
It's another live camera. So we're on that camera right now.
We're on that camera now? So is that camera 1, and then that's camera 2?
This is camera 1.
That's camera 1?
But we're on this
And camera 2. So can you just switch them?
I can switch back and forth.
Okay, camera 1,
You want to put tape on the back of them?
camera 2, camera 1, camera 2. Okay, I like that.
I'm mesmerized now.
So what's up, Aaron?
Not much, man. It's been a busy day.
Yeah,
One of those
it
days.
has. So what do you want to start with?
Some great news to talk about.
We
Yeah,
do.
we
We
do.
got some really exciting news today. We've been working on this for a little while, and we are happy to announce that we have partnered with Branch & O'Keefe, and we are now the official North American distributor for these beauties right here, Branch & O'Keefe cylinder heads. So our partnership with them has been strong since the beginning, and we're going to build upon that now. If you want Branch & O'Keefe heads, you can call Branch. They're going to refer you to us or call us, and we'll get you a set. Terrific set of heads, extremely well designed. Port work is flawless, and they make really, really great power everywhere in the curve.
That's right. And I would say there our numbers streaming on the bottom, but I have no idea if it is or not. What is our phone number?
Like
615-771-7775. Oh, look, we got this guy. So we have a PowerPoint, but I don't think it really works. Oh, okay. So Jacob will run that, and
Tell me when to go next.
615-771-7775.
So we are live.
Yeah, we're live right
How
now.
does Ryan Seacrest make it look so easy?
He has a script,
Yeah,
And
we
he has,
don't
like-
have any of that. We didn't
and-
prepare
yeah.
like at all.
and he has like 80 people that are like, look over here, look over there. This is what you're gonna say. Read on the prompter.
So what are we going to dive into?
Well, I was just basically telling them how we kind of qualify for what the builds are, you know, and
So do you want to start with the PowerPoint?
oh, you're back there.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah, not yet. We'll keep going for a minute. On the PowerPoint, we've got some dyno charts, and mainly it's just to go over like how effective exhaust and intakes are for your power flow. Because, man, I'll tell you what, I don't know how many people come in here and they have exhaust systems that sound awesome, and they want us to build like some huge motor, and they want to keep that exhaust, and it's disheartening when we have to tell them no. But you know, I would just rather not spend somebody's money and then have them leave disappointed, because it happens all the time. I mean, we get people in here all the time that they have somebody build something somewhere else and they did a pretty good job, but they missed a couple of key things, and one of those is exhaust. And it's not just an M8 thing. It's been that way since, you know, the engines were created. And the manufacturers really have great exhaust designs, and they spend millions of dollars in R&D figuring it out. And then just because you throw something on that looks neat and turns out in front of the bag and sounds loud, you're probably not going to make it perform better. It's going to be the opposite.
Right.
You know, you need length and you need pressure inside the system to maintain your power flow. And so that's a lot of what we consider when we do engine builds.
And a well-designed exhaust too, they're taking into consideration the total displacement, the compression. There's math that goes into the design of those pipes, and the good designers are using that math to make a really, really terrific pipe. One that runs broad. You know, you can run a short pipe with a big diameter. That'll make really terrific, you know, power in one little range. But the longer primary pipes make really great broad torque curves and, you know, make the power everywhere. It's a
Show us the
balancing act.
PowerPoint. Where'd he go?
Also,
Nah,
hey,
he left.
Cedric, can you turn the music off?
Jacob. Well, our PowerPoint guy left. As soon as I said, well, wait a minute.
We got guys sitting
Hey.
here. Anybody have any questions to kick us off with? Suavecito. I'm still waiting for sponsorship. I've been going at this for a little while. Maybe Suavecito will send me a care package in a box if someone's hooked up with him.
No. I don't think you're that good looking.
No, I know, but I'm not opposed to free stuff either.
Nobody is. Jacob, PowerPoint? This is the guy in charge right over here. He's
Like, you want to talk about that real quick, too?
oh, okay. So yeah, the Horsepower Night gift card kickback. If you spend $1,000, you get $100. $2,200. So how long does this go? Is this just for today? Or is this like?
This is a today special, so if there's anyone on the fence about, you know, kind of going over, maybe this would persuade you a little bit. You either keep the gift card or roll it towards. We'll give you a gift card.
He's like, what?
He's doing a build right now. He's like, yeah, I'll roll that right in.
And that goes all the way up. So for the guys, if you're online, let me jump in here real quick. If you're online, checking us out, we are doing a gift card kickback. That's hard to say 3 times fast. I'm not even gonna try it. Spend $1,000 and get $100 towards your build or towards anything in the store. I mean, all the way up to if you spend $10,000 on a build, I'm gonna give you $1,000 to apply towards the build, or $1,000 worth of T-shirts or koozies, whatever tickles you. So yeah, that's part of the promotion we've got going on today. And we're gonna try to keep this going. And so if you're on the fence, you know, today's not the day. We can always make something happen tomorrow or the next day.
So, next slide. Now, to make it interesting, I have no idea what these slides are or the order they come in.
We're going to go stage 1 first.
So, we're going to go over
Stage
stage 1. All right.
Air cleaner, exhaust tune.
Yeah, stage 1 is air cleaner exhaust, and it's preferable to do a tune. We did a video a little while back, and Shane was talking about it, and we had a gentleman with a Sportster that came in just for a dyno tune, and it turned out really well, and it ran better. You get smoother acceleration. You'll get just as good or better gas mileage. And there were some comments online, you know, people were like, you don't need to tune it. They come from the factory tuned, and that is true. However, every engine breathes a little bit differently, and if you take the time and spend the money to tune it, that is such a good investment, because why would you not want your particular motor to run optimally? So
And we've seen even the same bike with the same combination, like I think as you're describing. The same bike, same combination of parts will tune a little bit differently.
yeah, every single bike has its own curve.
I guess the description for that would be stacked tolerances, I guess, right? Like there are a series of tolerances in the build of the motor. Every one of them, you know, you can have +2 here, -4 here. Maybe you've got -2 here, +4 here, you know, in thousandths, and you stack those up. The tolerances are different. Things seat differently, so he tunes them differently.
But basically, a stage 1, a good air cleaner. We really love the S&S Stealth because it has really good flow characteristics. It looks sharp. It has a bunch of different covers you can get for it, and you can also get
That stock
this little,
adapter.
yeah, little chingadero, so you can put your stock cover back on there.
So that's why they call it the Stealth. If you want to hide it behind a stock cover, hang that on it, use a head pipe with a factory heat shield, no one knows you were there.
The Harley Stage 1 air cleaner is it's kind of a cone design, which is good for airflow, but the whole top half of it is covered by the cover, and there's no venting or anything, so really you're only getting just the bottom portion that's actually going to create the flow. So when you do a cover like the S&S one, you get flow all the way around the filter to go into your intake, so it's a much more even distribution of velocity. And we like certain pipes. I mean, there's a lot of companies out there that like the pipes they like. We run a lot of D&D, Billicats, full sack head pipes, S&S, Sidewinders, S&S, Mark 45s.
Let's talk about the mufflers, slip-ons, and the ways we can go wrong on slip-ons. Because we see a lot of people, they'll buy a certain type of exhaust, and we know from experience it does not flow that well off the head pipe. Even if you pair a really great head pipe to a muffler that doesn't have a great flow characteristic, usually those kind of mufflers are very big. They don't have where's the baffles at? There you go. We can show some of these. These are great tuned baffles, and Mike on the dyno, depending on the engine configuration that we're working with, will select one of these baffles. Sometimes we'll even take a baffle and modify it slightly depending on what it's asking for on the dyno. But you can have the best head pipe in the world and hang an ugly muffler on it, or I call it ugly because it just doesn't perform. I mean, just an ill-performing muffler, then it'll ruin the curve. You know, we don't want to get into the habit of trying to correct a curve with a cam or do something like that for a bad performing pipe. I'd rather optimize every area of the curve, put the right cam in it, put the right header on it, put the right muffler on it, and optimize the curve everywhere. This keeps the dips out of it, makes it very linear. When you're riding a bike like that, the way the power comes on when you twist the throttle, it's not going to feel like it's going to lurch at you or pull out of your hands. Linear meaning like when you twist the throttle, it's going to deliver what you expect it to deliver in all RPM ranges. Those bikes are a blast to ride, and he builds a lot of them like that. Just got to select the right parts. Usually, again, like I was saying, those mufflers that tend to go like this at the end, and that have, you know, super loud baffles and all of that. Once you get the flow slowing down, the pressure increases, reversion increases, and it has a really negative impact on the curve.
You usually get a real good top end response, but the rideable range suffers greatly because you want to have the pressure in the pipe in that rideability area, like 2,700, 2,500, 3,000. I mean, if you really sit back and think about it, if you take a normal ride, how many minutes do you think you're at 5,500 RPMs? A lot of people have never even seen 5,500 RPMs because they think that 4,500 is of where the engine's gonna like hit the rev limiter. Because I'm telling you, when you go to 6,000 RPMs, it's screaming, and it'll run there. You can run a bike at 4,500 RPMs all day long, and it won't hurt anything in the bike. But most people aren't riding there. Most people are riding 25, 3,000, 3,500. So you don't want your power at 5,000 RPMs. You want your power as early as you can, as close to idle as possible, and that's what we always strive for.
Yep. Area under the curve. If that's been expressed to you before when someone talks to you about a dyno sheet, what we're talking about is not just the peak number. A lot of people will focus on the peak number, either in torque or horsepower. You can have a bike that'll make, more peak, but a bike that will make less peak than a bike that's showing more peak horsepower but carries more area on the curve. That will be a faster motorcycle. Even if he claims, I got 10 more peak horsepower, great. But if it's 5 lower over, a 4,000 RPM range, that bike that's making slightly less but over a greater area is going to be faster. So the builds that we do, we try to focus on a great big, nice flat curve. That's what makes them move really quick.
Even on a stage 1.
Yeah, even on a stage 1, yeah.
So next would be stage 2, right?
Yeah, quick question. I think it's a good time to ask. Can you go over the difference, like now that we're in tuners? I think now would be a good time to ask, since we're in a stage 1, can we go over the difference between a map and a flash, like a full tune? If you're kind of teetering on that edge of,
Sure.
This is like a good building block of a build. I want to go stage 2, 3, and 4 in the future, but right now, my pocketbook's only set at stage 1. What route should I go from there, tuner-wise?
Well, getting a good tune inside your ECM is probably the most important thing you can do, no matter what stage you're going to go to. When you change the internals of the engine, you're going to need to retune the motorcycle. You can, at any different stage, you can just put a flash in there, and as long as you're running it in closed loop most of the time, the O2 sensors aren't going to let it run for a prolonged amount of time outside of the parameters. Now, if you get a whole bunch of parts and whip them together and do like a homemade stage 3, and then you put a tuner that's not a real comprehensive tuner on that, and then just put a flash and start going and ripping drag races, and it runs like crap for half of the RPM, but once it gets out of that hole, it just takes off. You're probably not going to have a motor that's going to have a lot of longevity, because you don't know what's happening inside the engine, and if you're running it in a real lean or a real rich condition, you're causing detriment to the internals and to the performance of the motor. And when you spend even on a stage 1, if you spend $1,000 on an exhaust pipe and you spend $300 on your air cleaner, you should at least get a flash from one of the companies that's what they do. There's companies out there that sell parts, and then they also have this tuner that you can plug in, and it tunes the ECM. It's not a piggyback, but it doesn't have any of the characteristics that a piggyback doesn't have. The only difference is it isn't sitting on the motorcycle. But there are companies out there such as Power Vision, which we prefer, TTS. These are comprehensive tuners, and even when you put a flash in there, it's a flash that has been an averaged cell count over, several motorcycles over several years.
It's lacking the optimization that you physically go in and do when you do your tune, and that's the big difference. I explain that to people on the phone all the time. Like, what is the difference? What am I going to feel? And it's just that. It's the optimization of all those cells in the tune. I call it sharper. I don't know what you would call it. But the best way for me to describe it is just a sharper, snappier, better tune, more efficient, just better throttle response.
Yeah,
everything gets
smoother
better.
throttle response.
Yeah,
and you'll get on average 5, 8, maybe 10 foot-pounds of torque, the same in horsepower, just from the flash to the dyno tune. Now, if you go from a stage 1 and you have a dyno tuned, and then you do a stage 2 or stage 3 or stage 4, you're going to need to retune it. So it's always a good idea to think about what you want to do later, because if you want to do this cool air cleaner and this big huge pipe now because you're going to do a great big motor later, you're wasting your money right now.
Yeah.
You might as well just leave it stock until you can get to the end, or do it in stages where you say, I'm going to do a cam and maybe some lower end work and then I'm going to ride it for 2 years, and then I'm going to do the rest. And you understand that some of those parts aren't going to cross over from one to the other, and it might not be that big of a deal. I mean,
and if you have questions about that, call me. I mean, I have people all the time call and go, well, I've got the money to do this now. What can I do that I won't be throwing parts away, but that we can stage this build in a way where I can put some parts on now and continue to build on it in the future. And there are some builds that we can do that on, depending on what your end goal is. There are some cases where, because of the financial limitations in the beginning, we just don't have the ability to put the parts on in the beginning that will get you where you want to go. If you're honest with yourself, and if you're honest with me and Mike about what your goals are and where you want to go, we can tell real quick if we can craft it into a build and stage the parts in a way where we can do it and not have any parts hit the floor, go in the trash. Yeah. It happens a lot. There are piles of pipes back there and all kinds of different parts of, well, I had this, and even if you don't know it at the time, really consider what you want to do, what your ultimate goals are, and we can get you there with a minimum of waste.
Yeah. And this sucks for us too, when people have bad combinations and come in and they're like, well, it just isn't doing what they said it was going to do.
It's worse is when they're frustrated about it.
Yeah.
Because they already I spent $1,500, and they're trying to put the square peg in the round hole and go, well, I really got to keep this, and we have to try and break it to them.
It's going to cost you $2,000.
A question, and I know you guys can appreciate this because this is a question that you almost hear every day, and it's people have a setup and they're not happy with the way it runs. What should they do next? So we have Angel Sierra on here, and it says, I have a 2018 Road Glide with a Harley Screaming Eagle air cleaner, Reinhardt head pipe, and slip-ons. It's been dyno tuned, but seems flat. What should I do next?
A Screaming Eagle air cleaner, Reinhardt head pipe.
Reinhardt head pipe.
And
18.
Is it a true dual head pipe, or is it a crossover head pipe?
We will see if she answers there.
Because if
or
the
he.
answer is
Actually, I
true
guess it could be
dual,
he. I assume she. That's not right.
Well,
I have the answer part of it.
So what are they using for a tuning device?
It says it's been dyno tuned, so I'm not sure.
Well, I guess we would need to find out what actual
if they
tuner's on there, see if they'll
answer
respond. If they let us know what tuner, because if you have a setup like that and it's a newer motorcycle like an M8 and you use the Screaming Eagle Pro Street tuner, there's no possible way to tune that motorcycle for it to run well, because the limitations that are set upon Harley-Davidson by the EPA are not designed to run with free-flowing exhaust systems like that. They're designed to run with Harley's head pipes and the EPA compliant type mufflers. Now the Harley head pipes are not bad for stage one. You can really get some power out of it just by putting slip-ons on.
While you're on there, somebody just asked about the FP3 in stage 2.
Well, you know what? So now we get into the opinion thing, but I guess what I would do is look at actual tuning centers out there. Some of the big guys, Fuel Moto, T-Man, GMR in Texas. Ask if any of them run an FP3 tuner. And I don't think you will get any yeses. And I think they'll say, I won't tune it with that. And we won't tune with an FP3 tuner.
I think we have a stack of those back there, too.
Yeah.
To put it politely.
So, Angel says true duals.
Yeah.
Okay. And
So-
what kind of tuning device?
Waiting for the tuner.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, an FP3 is not a bad setup for just a stage one, but you know what? You're going to avoid your warranty. So if you're going to spend, they're like $300. If you're going to spend that much money, just get a Pro Street tuner. $400? They're $400. And you can get a full Power Vision with a display that will do anything to the motorcycle for the same price. So sorry, Vance and Hines, it's just not good.
Yeah. And carry with you pretty much
We got a
all the
question back
way
here.
up to turbo and supercharged
So you
application.
said the FP3 would void warranty. Does the Power Vision
Yes.
by Fuel Moto?
Anything that is not a Pro Street tuner has the possibility of voiding your manufacturer's powertrain warranty. Now that's not your entire warranty.
Right.
It's the powertrain warranty. So what people don't understand is if you do that and it gets flagged and your instrument cluster goes out, you're still covered under your factory warranty. But if you have a lifter go out, there's a possibility that's not going to be covered under a factory warranty.
But at the same time, you're saying that the Harley tuners don't have the capability that the Power Vision would have.
They don't, which actually is more detrimental to your engine.
Outside of the Harley stage kits.
Yeah.
Though they're designed and calibrated for the Harley stage kits, outside of the realm of what those kits do and how they alter the flow, it's ill-equipped. It just can't handle. It doesn't give him the access that he needs to properly tune outside those parameters.
You can't alter the fuel tables more than like in some cells it's 8%, in some it's 15%. You can't alter the master AFR table at all, which I call the God table, and it just doesn't give you the ability. And the reason is because there were so many dealerships that were using the Super Tuner, which is the predecessor, which was a fairly immersive tuning device, but they don't understand that you can still have a very efficient running motorcycle and have one that's badass. Like Anthony, you've got what, 136 foot-pounds of torque, 130 horsepower on a 117, and it will most likely pass emissions everywhere in the U.S. because it's set up to be still compliant, and you can do that even with like you look at the car world. The car world, the emissions are even worse, and you have 800 horsepower sports cars that are passing emissions.
Do you know what kind of mileage you're getting right now? Having fun mileage.
Yeah, he's like, I don't care. He goes, I don't care what my gas
curious.
mileage is.
Have to go as far as the smallest tank in my group.
Yeah, that's easy enough for you.
But let's show him that case.
Yeah.
This is a pretty good example. We'll bring it over to the camera. So this bike was under warranty. See, move the rods. The rods are seized, and it had a Screaming Eagle tuner on a Harley Stage 4 with an exhaust and intake that it wasn't equipped for, and all this guy did was run it as fast as he could, as hard as he could, and it just got so hot that you can see the size of the pistons maybe. And you guys can come up and feel this when you're done. The rods are almost seized solid. You can barely even move them. The good news is we got it covered under warranty, because what the motor company does is the dealerships have a program called Digital Technician, and when we plug it in, it'll read the ECM, and it allows us to communicate with the motorcycle, because now everything is on sensors. You know, it isn't the good old days of carburetors and all that back like it used to be, but they're so much more efficient, and they run so much better now, and the manufacturing is so much better that you really don't have mechanical issues all that often. If it's tuned well and you've got good quality parts, you're probably not going to have issues. We get questions all the time with our big 124s and 128s, you know, are they going to have longevity? We have several of them that are approaching 10,000 miles with nothing more than just standard services. You know, it doesn't really cause that big of an issue. There's a chance that you'll have parts that'll fail, but that doesn't matter what you have inside the engine. There's a chance that the parts are going to fail on a stock motor. There's a chance they're going to fail on a Screaming Eagle motor. There's a chance that they'll fail on one of the big ones. But, you know, if you deal with reputable companies that stand behind their work, it's not going to be something that's going to be, you know, a game ender by any means, even if your warranty gets flagged. But when you call warranty with an engine problem, they have you plug it into Digital Technician, and when you do, it pops up on the screen, because the computer reads your ECM, and it can tell if the ECM has been coded with non-Harley-Davidson tuning, and it sends a message back to the Harley-Davidson, and they say, nope, we're not going to cover your engine. And really, they have no choice. It's not because Harley hates us. It's because they don't have a choice. They had to take that stance because they're getting huge fines from the EPA, and they got cracked down because there were so many people out on the field that were not complying with EPA, some out of ignorance and some just didn't care.
Not tuning correctly, some of it too, right?
Yeah. A lot of it is just, you know, inexperience and not knowing how the devices work. So it's not really Harley's fault. I mean, I doubt they like fielding the hundreds and hundreds of phone calls they get about people that are upset because something should be covered under warranty and it's not. I don't think that's probably what Harley enjoys to do all day long.
Hey, Roy, going back to the question, was that a tuning question more or a hard parts question?
I think they just wanted to know what to do next, and they're not sure of what tuner they have.
What's their goal?
That we'll see. I'm getting a lot of questions on here, and I will put this on here. I'm getting a lot of questions about this and that, and one of the things that we do differently is everything is per person, and I'm trying to explain that to people online because
Yeah, we don't offer
without knowing
any flat solutions for anything.
Yeah,
We
exactly.
craft every
So
build.
even for the people online, without knowing how you ride, whether you're 2 up or 1 up, or if you bounce it off the rev limiter, or where you want the power, it can change everything
Right.
that we recommend, whether it's intake or exhaust or cam. Everything is so subject to so many questions that most of these questions are not easily answered with one answer.
I guess in a broad term, we can talk about true duals a little bit. You know what I mean? That'll answer some of that question, right?
Sure.
The effective true dual. I mean, a true dual is going to be a horsepower pipe. It's going to impact the torque in a bad way. They're peaky pipes. They are loud pipes, oftentimes, but they're not the best for making that nice, broad, long curve that we like to see. So if you have one, I apologize, but we, as a general course of action, steer clear of them. And we'd prefer a well-designed, you can get a true dual look if it has a crossover in it. And there are several manufacturer pipes that make, if you compare in drag racing terms, an X pipe to an H pipe, it would be kind of like looking at the X design in some of the really well-made 2-into-1 and 2 exhaust systems, or a 2-into-1 versus a straight 2 with a crossover in it. Usually those are rectangular, varying in size, from like that to God like that, who knows. But the ability of the exhaust system for one cylinder to see the pressure wave from the other is very important. And if you don't have that, it negatively impacts the curve, period. So I'd steer clear of those if you can. And I mean, that kind of goes across the board and if you're asking about performance and you're tuned in, you're probably wanting to make more power, more torque. So
Right.
in general, that's what I would say.
So we're on to stage 2.
Yep.
So a stage 2 engine is you've got your air cleaner, your high flow intake, exhaust, and so you add a cam. Another thing that people have the misconception of is that bigger is better when you get cams, and that is not true. In fact, we have I have a couple of dyno charts that I gave Jacob. Where did Jacob go? He's a terrible host. You know how to flip those? They're on there somewhere. I asked him how we'd be able, I was like, how are we going to know? He's like, I got him kind of set up as a slideshow and I'll be here. Oh,
Dyno sheets.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we get a lot of people with Harley-Davidson Stage 4s that'll come in and they just want more than what that'll do. And we will actually give them, what I really like to do with a Harley-Davidson Stage 4 is put a Redshift 468 cam and a really good exhaust. And
That's one right
this
there.
is one right here. So this gentleman came to us and he had a Harley-Davidson Stage 4 with the Sony Road Rage pipe. And you can see this big dip. And he had a Pro Street tuner on it and it just couldn't handle it.
What cam did he have in it, the 515?
The 515,
Yeah.
yeah, the Harley 515. So all we did was change his cam to a Redshift 468 and tuned it with Power Vision. And you can see at 2,500 RPMs, he went from 80 foot-pounds of torque to 131 foot-pounds of torque.
And it sounds completely counterintuitive, right? Like a 515 cam versus a 468. But the way that dynamically, the way that the air is moving in and out of the motor, and the ability of the motor to capture cylinder pressure is where that power is coming from. And that cam is actually, we talked a little bit earlier too about foundation builds. That 468 cam is one that I really love for foundation building with people. You can put that cam in a 107, you can put it in a 114, then you can put it in a high comp 114 and watch it take off. It makes some terrific numbers in like a 11 to 1 or 11.3 to 1, 114. Just jumps out of your hands quick. Like
And the
On-demand
fueling
power.
465 Reaper is also one of those.
Yep.
And these aren't big cams, but man, they make great power if you get the right setup. And you just can't do it unless you have the components that are there. So you kind of have to weigh, well, what do I want to do? Do I want to have a bike that just runs like crap until I get to 3,500 RPMs and keep my warranty, or do I want to say, warranty be damned, I want to just ride a bike that just runs like hell, and most likely you're not going to have any issues.
Yep. And I'm not picking on you, but you did that. You had what was it, a 107? No, 114. 114 standard compression with the 475G, and his main complaint was it was riding like a light switch. It was dead on the bottom, gets to $3,000, and it jumped out of his hands and took off. So we've done this before, going to the 124, 128 range at 11-to-1 compression with the 475 cam.
It's great.
And it
Stock
is a
heads.
really nice setup. Yes, the factory heads, factory throttle body. It should make somewhere in the realm of 120, 123 horsepower and 140, 145 foot-pounds of torque. It is a blast to ride.
Yeah.
Now, if you don't have the cylinder heads like these, the power on the big end is going to tip over a little bit, so it's not going to carry out the long end super flat.
Sure.
Like in this area, it'll curve like that a little bit more. You put the heads on something like that, and it will most likely continue to run quite a bit flatter and probably even have some pickup on the bottom end as well.
So another thing with stage 2, since you get in the cam compartment, we always replace the lifters. We prefer S&S lifters because these are just real high quality components. And so since you're going to run the risk of not being able to have anybody cover the build, you might as well try to put the most robust components you can to minimize your risk. You know, I mean, you're already there. I know that it all adds up, but something that we do in all of our builds, we replace the lifters, we replace the stock lifter cuffs with aluminum, so that these are fiber, and I can move them with my hand. And this is what's holding the lifter in place when it gets into the full.
That's dead cold. Wait until it gets hot.
Yeah. Can you see it? Can you zoom in? And then these are the lifter cuffs that we put in. This is a real cheap insurance policy. These retail for like $50. And I'm telling you, man, why would you want to just run this after you put $3,000-$4,000 into it, when for $50 you can put this in?
Right.
You do have to make sure that you have clearance tolerances for the manufacturer's spec on this, so it's not something you just slap in and then throw it down the road, because you can actually cause problems if you don't understand how these components go together.
Yep.
And at that point also, you can look at whether or not you want to go with an oil pump, a cam plate. You know, the stock oil pumps and cam plates run good. Do we have any of the 2020 pumps yet, Jeremy? The 2020 Harley pumps with the eight lobe pump. Do we have any of those in stock yet? I'm not sure if we do, but Harley-Davidson has actually updated their stock oil pump as well for 2020. They've changed the lobe design, they've changed the pump body and the cover, and it does not retro back. So when we do, another thing that we like to do when we're doing engine builds is we stay current on the latest Harley components. So if you don't want to opt for one of the high performance plates and pumps, what we do is we install whatever the latest version Harley does, because again, that's like $150. So why would you not want to put the latest in there when you're already there? You know, you don't have to get back in there ever again. And if they come out with a new one, you don't need to go and just start pulling your bike apart because they came out with a new oil pump.
But if you're going to be there, why not do that?
Yeah, but if you're there,
Better pressure, better volume, better scavenging, everything better.
so I think we're on to stage 3.
Yep, and also one thing that we do on a stage 2 sometimes is we start to address the clutch, depending on what the build is. If it's going to be making enough torque, sometimes we'll opt for a set of springs. Sometimes we'll start to look at a variable pressure clutch, depending on the model of the bike. These are centrifugal, so as the bike picks up RPM, it adds clamping force to the clutch. You don't have to buy a new hub, new basket, any of that stuff, no new elements. This will just drop right on the top plate, and I'm pretty sure they say this holds up to about 150 foot-pounds of torque. But that's roll-on load. I wouldn't trust that at 140, 150 foot-pounds of torque. You know, dumping the clutch, drag racing, getting after it real hard. If you're trying to wheelie a bike, we'll talk about the billet baskets and stuff a little bit later. Also, another thing that we add in every one of them, if it's a chain drive, we replace the camshaft sprocket. The factory sprocket is a little bit loose, has a little bit of movement. It's not as accurate. This is a press-on piece. It increases the accuracy of the timing of the camshaft. Super cheap insurance. We don't even ask about it anymore. If we're doing a cam job, this is going in it, if it's coming out of our shop. So stage 3?
Stage 3.
Stage 3.
So stage 3. And
I know what I'm talking about.
that Jacob.
I'm sorry. There's pizza over here.
It's like 3 minutes between parts, and every time you're like outside, you're like, oh. So stage 3 is when you add cylinders and/or compression. So you're either going to go larger displacement, more compression, or both. So the heads come off. That's the next part of the.
I want to grab a set of Revolution cylinders. I forgot to grab a set of those. Can you grab me a set of Rev cylinders and pistons?
We have.
Yeah. Sorry, I forgot them, but I wanted to show the difference between the S&S cylinder and a Rev cylinder.
So these are some performance. This is a 1200 performance kit for a Sportster from S&S, because yes, we do build a lot of Sportsters too. And this winter, I think we're going to have a lot of videos coming out on those, because we've got some pretty gnarly ones that we're going to be putting together here in the shop that are all of our own bikes.
Like this one?
Like that one. We've got some flat track bikes. We've got Shane in the back. He had Revolution heads, and we're both doing the 1250 kits. He's got, I think he's got zippers cams in his. So they're just fast little screamers, and we love
fun
them.
little machines, man.
Randy's got one. We're just gonna make yours so fast you can't even ride it. It's gonna be like, I don't even like it. I'm gonna sell it.
When we do our stage kits here, typically speaking, if we're doing a 107 to a 114 or a 114 to 117, we'll be using the Harley-Davidson cylinders and pistons. They're Maui pistons. They're really good. The bores are round most of the time.
Well, I hope so.
Concentric most of the time.
Yeah.
But either the S&S or the Harley-Davidson is going to be an aluminum casting with a cast iron sleeve that's machined, right? When we assemble them, the ring gaps are all checked, filed to perfection. The precision of the installation that these guys do is second to none. And we get some really, really good numbers and performance out of them as a result of that. Sometimes on a build, we'll opt for an all aluminum cylinder, which we're going to show you here in a second. Got a knife. And I got a 107 piston sitting up there too.
So you open it. So this is a 124.
That's the
Or is this a-
4-quarter piston. I'll be right back.
Yeah. Jacob. I know, right? So here's a stock M8 piston. No, this is a twin
That's
cam.
a twin cam piston.
So
yeah.
this is a twin cam piston.
Crap. Well, still, it's like
Well, it
what,
doesn't matter.
3.9
Yeah.
bore or whatever. Pretty damn similar.
They're huge. These are great, man. So this Nicosil cylinder, there is no sleeve. Once they forge the cylinder itself, they precision cut the bore, and then they treat it with nickel silicone
carbide.
nickel silicon carbide, which makes it extremely hard. And a lot of the race cars have these kind of cylinder linings. And like I said, I mean, we have engines out there on the road that are 124s, 128s with this cylinder that are approaching 10,000 miles with no issues at all. So it seems counterintuitive because it's aluminum, but you can't even hone it with a bead hone. If you put a bead hone in it, it doesn't do anything at all. It doesn't even scratch it.
Yep. And we've had one apart recently. Had broken a head bolt, which is another thing we'll talk about when we go into this. We got a really good look in the bore, and they look like brand new, like shockingly brand new. One failure point that we found, Mike has found, head bolts. The factory head bolts are one-time use only, and we have fractured several of those. So we have opted now to go with these. These are S&S. The price point on them is terrific. You can, obviously ARP, great fastener company. They're pretty proud of them, but they're terrific. We like these. They're 200,000 PSI bolts. Really nice rolled threads. They're nice. They torque down really evenly. This goes into every single build that we do. It's not an option. If we are taking the top end off of your bike, it's going to have the good stuff in it. So this is what goes in it. Garçon.
I think we'll probably do this again and we'll get better at it.
Yeah.
So when you go to stage 4, that's when you add cylinder heads because you're going for maximum flow in and out of the motor. And at that point, you know, we always run a larger velocity throttle body, and you really just want to be able to get as much air into the motor and as back out as you can. So now you can run into the problem where you have cams that are so small that they can't physically get the air into the engine. So, you know, when you say that it's hard to have a cam that's going to be able to do everything, it's because when you're moving and compressing the air, you can have a cam that lets so much air in, you lose all your velocity, so it's a dud and it doesn't matter anyway. But you can also get so much air velocity that the cam doesn't open far enough to get the amount of air that you're actually trying to burn into the cylinder. So it goes both ways. And one of the things we really like to run with this is we love Andrews 520 cams. We really like the Fueling 521, the S&S 550 cam. They're fantastic. You know, that S&S drop-in kit with the 550 cam is a great kit.
Redshift 552.
The Redshift 552. You know, we're
we actually have a guy staying on here that was asking about how you guys felt the difference between I believe it was the 552 and the 550 cam. And it looked like he had a 124 and a bunch of stuff built on there. And I think he's in Australia, he said, and has nobody out there is doing this stuff. So they had no input. Well, but I believe he said it was like the 552 and the 550 cam.
The 552 doesn't like compression as much as the 550. It's a pretty narrow cam, so it likes a little bit less of a squeeze to be able to get the full power range out of it. So if you put a lot of compression, you'll have to back the timing off a little bit more than a 550. But they're both real broad lobe cams if you pair them with the right exhaust. And you know, on S&S's website, their cam has like a big dip on their dyno chart, but the exhaust systems we're pairing them with, there's no dip.
Doesn't do that. No. And you found the same thing too in talking about very similar cams that like and don't like timing. 521 versus the 508.
Yeah.
Say very, very similar situation with those two cams.
Yeah, the Fueling 528 is a ripper.
508.
508 is a ripping cam, but it's not the easiest cam to tune. You get a little bit higher top end numbers out of a 521, but it's much easier to tune. But you are right at the threshold where with a Reaper 508 cam, we love them in high compression 114s. We've done 7 or 8 of them in 117s, and you just don't get any more numbers out of a 117 than you do a 114. It's crazy.
Yeah, it plateaus. So
and
switch to the 521.
Yeah, Gary's back there like, yeah.
Yeah, that's
the belt eater back there. So, and the 521 runs great on a 117 with compression, but when you put it on a 114, it doesn't like it nearly as much.
Yep. And we've experimented too with that same setup, 508 cam, only moving the compression 0.3 of a point, and the difficulty in tuning and the numbers that come out of it, because you can't be as aggressive as you need to be with the timing, was pretty drastic.
Yeah. So it's
Little things.
yeah, it's little and we're lucky we get to practice. So, we get to try different combinations, so we can have kind of a store of information.
So hopefully that answered the guy's question on the 552. Do you seem like it got it?
I think so. He said thank you.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching, man.
The 550 is a great cam from SNS. Great cam.
Yeah, we had, that's what that bike has in it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That bike is wicked right now. We just switched the pipe on that bike. It had, interestingly enough, the diversity in the exhaust systems that we
We have
use.
that chart.
Yeah, do we have that chart that shows that
Well,
exhaust?
Jacob probably went to the bathroom or something.
So here's what we did. This this bike here in the corner
Hold on,
is a
Let me look at the thing.
Revolution 128-inch kit. It has these ported heads on it. They were decked a little bit. The compression on that bike sits at 11.3 to 1. It has an HPI 62 millimeter throttle body. It has HPI 6.2 injectors on it. And we initially ran that bike on the Chromeworks full system. And he rode it, made terrific power. And then he decided it was a little bit too quiet. So we pulled that exhaust system off and we put D&D's new big bore pipe on it. And it is louder. I mean, way louder.
It's loud.
It's screaming loud. But interestingly enough, showing what an educated company can do with really good research and development, that Chromeworks 2-into-2 pipe with the crossover chamber performed, I mean, literally within a horsepower or a half a horsepower all across the curve.
Yeah, it was almost identical.
It was almost identical. And for, two completely different designs of pipe to perform that close to each other is a real testament to the quality of the design and the thought that went in, to both of those pipes.
Both of them.
Yeah. We found early on that Chromeworks pipe was really good, and we also thought that it was a bit on the quiet side, but if you're looking for something that's like a stealth performer, gets on the freeway and runs, 4,500, 5,000 RPM, barks when you want it to, but when you want to cruise and listen to your radio, is nice and mellow, that's the system. If you want to scare everybody and make kids cry, run the D&D.
Oh yeah.
That thing is loud.
Which is actually happening here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has. Yeah, we have made a kid cry. on accident.
Yeah, Joe's bike
On
is another.
Yeah,
loud
Joe's
one.
Softail.
He was right behind me.
Yeah.
So, and I don't have that sheet, but we have this sheet right here, which is another great example of just exhaust. I think it's the next one he's going to put up. Nope. There you go. So this is a 2016 Road Glide with a 120R in it. And it's the same motorcycle with 3 different exhaust systems. So you can see the red one is a D&D Borzilla, and it ran great. It had 127 foot-pounds of torque and 128 horsepower. Then we switched it to a one-off Burns experiment pipe, which is a big, like a drag racing pipe, and you can see it just ate shit on the bottom, and then it picks up and it made the most power, but the power was at 4,500 RPM, so it made 131 foot-pounds of torque and 129 horsepower, and right from 4,000 to 4,500 to 5,000, it overtakes the other pipes. And then we had Fueling custom make a big bore pipe for us, a 2-into-1. All these are 2-into-1s, by the way. And we used their AR system and the dog balls, and we used a large dog ball baffle. We got sent a large one and a small one because we're gonna figure out, we're gonna do the other one too and compare the two for us and for Fueling's information. But look at 2,500 RPMs. It had 110 foot-pounds of torque. The other ones were 92 and 94. So from idle, as soon as you hit the hammer, it just takes off. So even though the Burns has more overall power, more overall torque, and right around the same amount of horsepower at the top, it doesn't matter because you're already gone.
Right. This is exactly what I was talking about earlier when I was talking about trying to describe area under the curve. This from here, this gain all across there is what I'm talking about. That is what's going to move the bike forward and make you quick. That's going to make you quick.
Yeah. And you're talking 18 foot-pounds of torque. Well, that's almost like getting a whole nother engine build. You know, I mean, when you add 18 foot-pounds of torque right off idle, it feels like you just went back in the shop again, and all we did was change the exhaust from one to another.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's pretty cool. We're really impressed with that pipe.
That feeling you get on some bikes when you twist the throttle and it feels like it waits a second and then it wants to come up, that's not normal and that shouldn't be expected. That can be fixed. Mm-hmm. It can be made better. So if your bike feels like that, we have some ways around that. Usually parts fitment.
And when you get into the real big stage 4s and real big displacement with real large cams, you will have a little bit of a lag because you have to have the physical time to fill the cylinder full of air, but you can move the lag from your riding area to right when you take off. And it's much more desirable to have your lag down here at 1,500 RPMs than it is to have it at 25, 28, 3,000 RPMs, because that's where you spend 80% of your time. Even if you drag race the bike, if you ride the bike to the track, guess what? You weren't in the power band the whole time you were riding the bike. You were on the street, and you need the street power to get to the track.
Be wary of dyno sheets that start here or here. If your dyno sheet, they show you starts there, ask to see the rest of it.
Yeah.
I would want to know, because if they're not showing it to you, it's probably because it's not that pretty.
Yeah.
All right, so when we get into stage 4-2, clutch. When we get into stage 4s, especially when we're talking about, 552, 594 cams, stuff like that, really big power. We talk about sometimes welding and pinning the flywheel, sometimes removing the counterbalancer, which I think I had one. Yeah, this. That's this assembly right here. This is the counterbalancer that lives in an M8. This sits on the flywheel. This runs off of it. This runs counter to the the movement of the rod and piston combination. This combination here weighs somewhere around 6 pounds. And when I was racing, again, we talked about this before, rotational mass. I'd have killed somebody to pull 6 pounds off my flywheel. And this is not that expensive to do. The labor, there's some labor involved in it. But if you're in that deep and you're going to weld and pin your flywheel, I would remove it. Revolution does some really, really nice work for us. The balancing comes back super true. Really nice looking stuff. So again, that's to help aid in the ability of the flywheel to not want to turn against itself in the case, right? The way that the crank is designed in these motors, most people know. If you're new to Harley-Davidson, you don't know, it's on a single pin with the ends of the flywheel sticking out. The cases are pressed together, they're not welded or anything like that. So under extreme force, they can walk against each other and cause run-out issues. So he checks the run-out on every build that we do, especially when we're doing a gear drive installation. There's a maximum tolerance of run-out, and when we're in doing the welding and pinning, it's usually done on those higher horsepower applications or guys that specifically want to go in and reduce the rotating mass. It just makes more horsepower, makes them feel snappier. We get asked a lot of times, what is the vibration like? The vibration is minimal. If you've ridden a balanced or a well-built twin cam, it feels like a twin cam. That's it. It's not shaking your hands, it's not buzzing you, it's not doing any weird stuff like that. So again, longevity and horsepower. After we get done with that, clutch. That's your stock. So
Yeah, I need to get that other one built.
Do we have a Barnett back here?
No, I don't think so.
Oh. Well, anyway, the stock clutch parts are cast. we have found the limit on a couple of those too.
Yep.
Both in we haven't had the hub yet. It's been the basket, right?
Yeah, the basket's the weakest link.
So you've got your clutch plates. Your clutch plates ride in the hub on the basket, and the baskets are cast. And if you're riding hard, you're dumping the clutch, you're trying to wheelie, you can fracture that cast basket. So in high horsepower, high torque applications, sometimes we'll go to a billet basket. Barnett makes a great one. BDL makes some really, really nice clutch components that we used before. And if you're going to hammer on it, that's what I would put in it. Do it right the first time, as opposed to being stranded on the side of the road with your, beautiful high horsepower bike with parts laid out in the primary, making a lot of noise and not going anywhere.
I've actually had a couple of people that have asked me about running counterbalance eliminators, compensator eliminators when we speak of clutches, and they've asked about doing it just with a stock clutch basket on Milwaukee 8s, and we've actually tried that, and it didn't work out very well because the clutch on an M8 is kind of a limited slip. So you can see these tapered fingers right here. They sit inside. This is the pressure plate, and it sits inside the hub. So when you release the clutch, it'll kind of walk a little bit and lock down. It's all to make the compensator and the clutch design and all that is just same as the push drive on the rear end. It's to make it so that it's got a smoother engagement, so that you don't have as strong of a pull or as hard of a hit when you let the clutch out. But if you eliminate the compensator and leave your stock clutch, this chatters real bad because the compensator isn't taking up the slack anymore. So the chain, it hits this and it knocks real loud in neutral unless you pull the clutch in. So if you are going to do a compensator eliminator, you're going to want to switch to a more traditional style basket.
This is just the clutch element. The basket is in another box somewhere, but this is a very, very nice clutch setup. This is probably good to, 170, 200 horsepower.
200 horsepower.
Yeah. There are some guys here in this room that have this set up, and it's terrific.
So when do you recommend, or when do y'all go away from the belt drive to the chain drive? Do y'all recommend that at all?
It depends on the rider, because we've got guys like Snow, that 128. He's got 7,000 miles on that motor, and we just put his second chain on. But all he does is he goes up to the light and tells people there's no way they're as fast as him, and he blows their doors off. There are guys that have, like Grit has a 140 horsepower touring bike, he has a belt drive, he's got a Harley clutch with a AIM SDR plate, never has an issue. It just depends on how you want to ride it.
He'll ride, we've ridden with him, and he'll just be going down the road just at 95, 100 miles an hour, and you're next to him thinking you're breaking the sound barrier, and he just looks at you and twists the throttle and takes off like you're standing still. That bike just moves. That's a decounterbalanced bike. Makes some really good numbers. Sounds terrific too. It's running that Chromeworks exhaust.
Yeah.
Really, really nice setup.
And then we've had bikes that have not blown the belt up or the primary system and have eaten the transmissions too. So it just depends on how you like to ride and what you're trying to do. And if you try to break it, you will probably be successful if you really want to. Yeah. Gary just laughs.
Yeah.
He blew up a transmission. He ate third gear.
What's that?
Well, it's sometimes you just like watch.
Yep. Watch this.
Hey, hold my beer.
That's how that goes, man.
So I think we've covered most of it.
Are there any more other questions from online?
I've got another slide in here that I thought was pretty interesting that I'd share. The one with the
Yeah, there's a lot that we didn't cover. I mean, there is so much nuance to what goes into doing these builds, especially around, we talked a little bit about how we craft the builds for the customers. I mean, even within the range of the same cam, like depending on what a guy wants, sometimes we'll pick an S&S 465 versus a fueling 465, just because it moves the curve a little bit. Like they'll tilt over one another just a slight little amount. But we take the time to do that. We pride ourselves a lot in delivering a build for a guy that is exactly what he's looking for. And you know, sometimes people get a little bit frustrated, I feel like, when we're spending a lot of time on the phone kind of figuring out and drilling down into exactly what that is. But it's important. It's an investment. And I'm pretty acutely aware of the fact that I do this every single day. And when I'm building or helping design a build to turn over to Mike to actually put together, you know, I might do 10 of them a week. This guy's going to do 1 in 10 years, maybe 2 in 10 years. And it's important. It's special to him. So I try to take the time to really, you know, drill down into exactly what they're looking for. And I'm willing to spend that time.
Here's another one that was pretty rough. So this one was a Harley Stage 4 on a CVO that had the Harley auto tune, and didn't like the way it ran. So we, when we get those builds, like we usually dyno tune them ahead of time. I normally don't. When we do an engine build, I don't put it on the dyno just to run to get the base to see what it was before, because it really doesn't matter. I mean, when you get on it and right away you're gonna go, oh yeah, it's not the same motorcycle. But we will do it on this stuff just because, one, it confirms what their suspicions were. So again, we took a Harley Stage 4 with a 515 cam, just changed the cam to a 468 lift, all the other components there, and you can see the difference in the power output. And look at where all of his complaints were, it just doesn't get out of its own way no matter how fast I go. It was faster when I bought the bike than it is now that I have a Stage 4 and I don't know what's wrong.
Now,
So we
was that
said,
largely
well,
a result of the AFR curve?
you know,
Or
I
the
don't.
cam.
I'm not really sure if they just auto tuned it to death or what. I don't know, but it ran like crap. And so we took the Harley auto tuner off, took all that off, put the narrow bands back in, tuned it with Power Vision with a 468, and it just killed it. Go to the next one. So this is a difference in air cleaners too. So this red line, this is a Harley ventilator. Those are not good air cleaners,
Yeah.
FYI.
Until we put the extreme cover on it.
They look great, but they are not. They're really long and flat, and there's nowhere for the air to get inside the chamber. You know, it's almost like Luke shooting down the tunnel of the Death Star, you know, and he's got to like make it right down that little tiny hole. That's what the air is trying to do to get in your motor. So all this is right here was I took the ventilator off, so it was just a backing plate. So it's run 2, run 3, I took it off, so it was just a backing plate and made 6 foot-pounds of torque and 3 horsepower.
That's a lot.
So people get upset when we're like, don't run a ventilator, but and I'm like, yeah, it's not good. It's they look neat and they're traditional and they've got like that, you know, the traditional styling, but that doesn't always work. Another combination that doesn't work really well is if you run heavy breathers with a twin-cooled motor or a touring bike that has fairing lowers. Because if you think about it, if you have fairing lowers and then you put a heavy breather right behind the fairing lower, where is it going to get its air from?
But worse yet, you're going down the road at 70, 80 miles an hour, you're probably creating a vacuum right there.
Mm-hmm.
You're not putting a high pressure area there for sure. So it's going to hurt it.
Yeah, and that's another thing where, like, if you just take the cover off, it'll make a couple horsepower the very next run, just because the inlet chamber is now moved back 4 inches from the block. So all of that is stuff that you need to put into consideration when you're putting these together. It's things that we try to think about. You know, when we ask, like, what kind of air cleaner do you have, and you say, oh, a ventilator, and we go, we should recommend this. They go, but this is in the Screaming Eagle book. It is. But so is the Ventilator Extreme. The Ventilator Extreme is basically like the top line. So you can keep a ventilator if you like the look. What that does is it gives you the perforated filter all the way across the front. So the intake can pull the air from
Straight
atmosphere, and it doesn't have to go through that flat little 1-inch gap to get to it.
Yep. And the guys with the CVOs are probably already aware too that that filter element that's on there is a paper element. It's not even the same filter you get in the aftermarket ventilator.
Right.
So if you have one, the backing plate is great, but we need to replace the filter to the taller filter, and then the extreme cover that goes on top of that, and then we're in business.
Real quick, we're just going to take like a 10-minute break. You guys can come up, check out stuff that we've got on the table.
Yep.
I'm going to play a video that maybe you guys have seen or haven't seen. It's on our YouTube channel. After that, we're going to come back for some good questions and answers that's on YouTube. And if you guys have anything for us while we showcase some cool builds, we're going to show off Monster that Joe Jeffries is letting us borrow for a little bit. Mike Monzi, Softails here, and Snow's CVO. And just some cool stuff we really did. We built this Dyna up too. So you guys hang out, get some pizza, get some beer, and we'll kick back here in about 10 more minutes.
Yeah, and thank you so much for coming. This is awesome. And tuning in for those of you at home. So now do we have like an intermission with some elevator music? Already cute. La, la, la.
Girl from Ipanema.
All right, Charlie.
I'm gonna tell you right now, we're doing this video without head. There's no way I'm doing this video without my favorite speeding glasses on. Because right after this, when we get on fast mode, do me some fishing, catch some largemouth, maybe some crappies. Radar, come in radar. Well, you'll do just fine. I need an M8 head from Moonshine, twin cam Moonshine head, and one of them there Sportster heads. We're gonna do us a video. Coming right up. That's me.
Got the suspension right.
These were my Sportster.
So
Dual spark plugs. Polished real nice. Polished just like my attitude. Just like my sense of humor and my ability to read. That's right. I can read. He does this every time. He says, oh, let's do this video real quick. And then he goes and gets his damn haircut or some shit. It's probably lunch. You know what? This bullshit, I'm gonna go to lunch. Hey, there he is. Waiting for you all day. Shit. He had to go get his hands for extra minutes. Camouflage sunglasses. Well, I was gonna go fishing because you weren't showing up. I was like, fuck, I'm taking the day off. You can't fish on We don't do it now. We'll just sit here and fish, find each other, on some badass bikes. But what we want to get right now, heads. Okay, we do a lot of motors, stock heads, built heads. Besides the horsepower we make out these big motors, Moonshine's warranty in the build as well. So if we do a 128, 124, all the way down to a 107, we're warrantying our builds during your factory warranty period. That way you have no lapse in coverage during the first 2 years before you hit that extended warranty mark. Extended warranty will cover these motors. It will pay what factory parts cost. That's something a lot of customers don't understand. So when we build something with our heads, which we're about to talk about in a minute, why our heads are so good, why you need to come and see us, is we warranty it. So anything to do with a 525 lift or less on these big builds, we're going to warranty for the first 2 years. So if you buy your bike from us and we do the motor day one, you'll have 2 years of coverage. If you buy a bike in a different state and you have a year warranty already expired for your factory warranty, and then bring it to us, we will cover that motor from the time we build it until your factory 2 year expires. I just want to clear a lot of that. That's what we're doing for our customers. So M8, once again, made a smaller cubic inch with a 525 or less cam. The cam change.
It's the Harley Retro.
Crazy. We'll build it. It's your own dollar.
They're going for $320.
Like you, that's you. What's that? I want to go over the reason M8s are making so much power, and it's mostly to do with this guy. The 4-valve head, it's not just the valves that's making all the power. This hole right here, it makes a whole basketball fits in that. Okay, this hole, on a twin cam head, you're finna John boat from that one. Finna? Did he just say you're finna John boat? fitting the job. You're fitting the job. So this is the key to the MA power. Look at them side by side. No
This goes on the
comparison.
side of your
Whether you're doing a
motor,
stock head or you're doing a
crankshaft
41, these are both
runs that way,
ported,
the cam comes here and they're
professionally
connected
done.
back here.
Our heads, we do on our motor builds,
This
ready
is
to rock.
an aftermarket real high quality. And look on the exhaust on it too. You know what? Because
What goes in must come out.
how about I'll go get a stock oil pump mechanical.
You notice on the M8 head, our exhaust side is mirror finish. The mirror finish on the exhaust allows the exhaust gases to pass through without leaving trace, so no soot building up here on the exhaust port on it. The intake side, on the other hand, just a little rougher. We don't need it as smooth. You have cold air and fuel going through there. Nothing's really sticking. There's nothing building up over time. You want turbulence. Here's your turbulence. That's it. It's a pretty good word. So this makes turbulence. If you look in there, you have neck down guides. You know, they're not, they haven't been hand done. We have them done already. They're all exactly the same every single time they're pressed in there. We don't have to take a stock one to grind them down, do them like some other guys we see doing out there on the heads. These things are nice. We do some special stuff into the combustion chamber to make it do what we need it to do, and we deck the heads depending on what size motor we're doing on the M8. So none of our cam wants the same exact compression ratio, so depending on the piston and the size of the motor determines what compression ratio we want to run. Sometimes too much compression, you'll actually lose numbers, not enough, you won't make them. Sometimes too much compression, you'll actually lose numbers, not enough, you won't make them.
Another big advantage of the 4-valve heads is, as you can see, the intake, single intake valve here versus 2 intake valves here. So the cam profiles are different. So we're going to get more lift out of these valves, but it's going to be moving so much more air because of the surface area of both of the valves. When this one valve opens up, you're going to get all the air flowing through this hole out of this one valve. When these valves both open, you have almost twice the surface area and the amount of air coming into the motor as this one. The M8s are far superior. To make the same kind of power in a twin cam as you can in an M8, you almost have to go so radical that you're doing this kind of stuff like what's going on my Sportster. The same valves that are going on this 110-inch dyno are going to be inside my Sportster with a custom-built combustion chamber to run 12-to-1 compression. But it's not the most streamable thing in the world. Where this guy, you can take a stock head and make more power than you're going to. That's when to do it.
Yeah, that's because of the design. Now, as far as wear and tear longevity, since we have 2 valves, they're smaller in size. We don't have to move them as far to get them to fully get the benefit of full crank and get the air to come around. So on an M8 head, you will notice the cams are smaller on M8s. So if you do a real big cam on a twin cam, you see them go 650 on upwards, 700s. You don't see that on M8s. You know, no one's really gone over the 600 mark.
I mean, there's a couple of boutiques cams out there, but it's not for a street. At that point, you're just going for maximum tension.
Well, they're that large, just the angle of duration that cam has is what they're doing to offset that. You have to make sure that agency is actually going across
Absolutely, Jamie.
the cam.
Absolutely. You also don't have to have nearly the spring pressure. If you look at the spring size difference, because you're not moving the valves in third gear and you're moving 2 valves, 2 small valves instead of 1 large one, you don't have nearly as much pressure on the valve train itself. So you don't have failures. You don't have a lot of the cam compartment issues that you have in the other models because you just don't have the amount of pressure.
So for longevity, less wear and tear on the valve, less wear and tear on all the moving components. That includes lifters, cams, everything, because of the way this is built. Everything's a little smaller and it's not moving as far. Therefore, we're getting better reliability out of them, better wear.
And wear and tear on the road.
So if you are having your motor built by us, and we're going with a pair of our ported heads, we're going to design them for every single motor. So if you're coming back to us from a different state, we're going to design the heads to work best for that combination setup. Whether it's a high pressure 114, you want to see a big boy and do a 128, we're going to set the head right in your motor.
So like I'm gonna crack his cam chest.
You know, that was a very
the hydraulic tensors. I wasn't gonna go as far as a gear dryer because you know what I mean? Another reason that much where I was just like, hey, I hate the design. It's really solid. All their longevity may not be there. I'm not going to
No, when you go to the hydraulic tensioner, it's fine. What you end up getting is a plate, like this is my twin cam plate that I'm putting in my bike.
You got a 20 hand?
15. I'm rebuilding the motor right now. It's going to be crazy.
Well, that was the thing too. Is I think I'm somewhat in my mind because if I start going crazy, then like this is I'm not going to
Yeah, I mean, I could have gone on 124. I went 117. For that reason, heat control. 15 street glide. And I use this Revolution Performance cylinders and pistons.
This is a stock one versus this guy.
Fueling will make this fueling. Fueling will make.
So I mean, it's stamped aluminum. Everything rides inside the parent material. This is machine billet T6061 aluminum, and it has bronze bushings that everything rides in. So the bronze is real porous for the oil, so it transfers oil real well, handles heat really well, and if something is to go wrong, you can buy just the bushings. So you can just replace the bushing, and you don't have to spend another $700 on the plate. Where if something happens here, you throw it away.
So you'd have to pull that whole apart, replace it.
No, it came as a chain, but I'm converting it over to a gear.
Yes, absolutely, and they're port matched. So if you look at the backside,
on that billet plate, on the end of the side. Yeah.
And I also don't want to go crazy when I'm on camera. I need something that just pulls on. So mine is the victim of a bike that I've got 202 exhaust. I know I'm choking it off.
get another piece of pizza before we get started. I should have got this ahead of time.
There's a ton of information on the twin cam on the camera. This is a 95. I don't know how much this is.
And fours?
My selection and stuff like cams. Really.
Well, what's going to affect or limit what you're going to do with it is less of displacement and more compression.
I think that bike came with what, 9.5
And when we add cylinders and pistons to that bike, you can make it a 100 pretty easily as a next stage kit for that. We would change the compression to 10.5 to 10.7.
That would change it.
And then you can be more aggressive on the cam. To a point, not where we're talking about longevity or rideability, but the ability to put enough cam in it to lift the curve on the bottom and still make a nice horsepower number out the top.
That's my thing. I ride such. I don't. I mean, when he was talking about who's ever seen 6,000, that thing will never see 6,000.
Yeah, most people don't.
It doesn't go to 5,000. I was actually trying to pay attention to that the other day, trying to figure out after I talked to you at the Cars and Coffee, and I was like, yeah, I really need to pay attention to where I really do ride the most. And I'm not going to sit there frequently at all. I'm 2 up now more than ever. So I think it'll be big. I mean, I'm the actual strength part of it. I'm the lower end of the RPM range, but it just seems dead. And I know it's a victim of the pipes. I've got long shots on it. I know they're choking it out.
How many miles are on it?
25,000.
So you're in that area too where the tensioners are going to start to...
That's why I wanted to address it. As a matter of fact, one of the first times was to get gas before, I was like, look, I'm going to check it and see, if anybody's been this thing before and changed it. It's a pretty common thing for people to address. So I just got the gas. I was like, I'm going to crack it open and find out. And I'm like, well, if I crack it open, I'm draining the fluid, why don't I just go ahead and change it all out? So, and then I got my repair and everything. There's so much information. I go, oh, get this, put this in. There's got to be this.
Randy's?
This is not a
It's fancy. I can't touch it.
But that's the thing is I'm trying to figure out where I'm going to get the greatest performance. Hey, here's
So why don't you maybe get a thicker filter on ventilators swing in the road line?
So we can put a header on it that has a crossover chamber. So as opposed to it just being two duals stacked up there.
Y'all carry the filters that fit those?
Okay.
so that's and the screen angle when you put the 2-2 with the long radius pipe, I think it looks great. You got the long shot sound, which I've never liked that.
That's like 3.97.
Matter of fact, I'll look at
What's my cylinder on?
pipes are on it now.
Yeah.
But this is what I bought.
This is forcer
That's
cylinder?
kind of my thing is saying, hey, I don't want to do what everybody just throw points at until they find either a combination they like or then they hire out here's $7 grand, fix this. So that's what I was trying to do is say, okay, if I'm going to do cams and everything now, shake the head log, got it apart. They go and pull the jugs, I mean, that's seems the time to do it if I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
Then I don't want to be throwing parts here and there, and then obviously still choke it off with. So I'm at that kind of point.
All right, guys, we're gonna get back to it.
Build plenty of engines, but never
That brings us back to that point that we were talking about earlier. Is just you've got to be honest with yourself and figure out what you really want to do, and just really reconcile with it and go, okay, I'll be happy with this.
It's like I run these on mine. With stock jugs. Standard.
It's kind of a downer sometimes. And I wouldn't know that's like mine. That's a deuce. That's what those are supposed to be like for somebody. You know what? That's not that shouldn't feel that hard.
Because then I can just put those in my stock jugs.
And if I twist the throttle, where's the game in those? I just don't because I'm
Yeah, that wouldn't be a bad idea. Maybe bring it in with somebody. Let Nick, who's a Dyna guy. I'm a Dyna guy. I got my bike over here. Take it for a zip and see what it feels like.
It's one of the first years of the
That's the magnetic relay injection, right? Yeah, I believe it's a magnetic relay injection. They're tunable. There are also replacement throttle bodies for them. We can get into tuning. You can tune it with the power vision, like anything else.
That's what I wonder is, I wonder how much is just improperly tuned because those power.
All right, guys, we're gonna get back to it. So what we're gonna do now is we've got the owner up here. We've got Jamie up here. He's gonna join us in our activity we've got going on. We're gonna pull some bikes up. We've got pretty like 4 prominent builds, minus one that you guys have followed us, called the 4 Shot. We've got a video on YouTube. Check that guy out. He's out riding, so that's why he's not up here with us right now. One build we're gonna bring up is this Softail right here. Mike is a great customer of ours. He's an awesome guy. This is his second built bike. He's got a Road Glide that we've also built. We're gonna pull that one up here. We're gonna pull this monster up. This is Joe's bike. Just wait till you hear about this guy. This one deserves a video as worthy as the 4 Shot. We're going to pull a CVO up, and we're going to pull up a Dyna that we built for a good friend of ours. It comes in a lot, so you guys just hold on tight, man. We'll get right back to it. Keep the questions coming. All right, guys, we're ready to roll.
I love that part. What's going on right now is
How's this working?
the high speed, low drag. The parts that look ugly are cool as hell. I love that.
Yeah, we'll pull it and we'll kind of see what's in them and we'll start
That's
them.
where I came, and I blow hot and cold still. I go, man, if I'm going to do it, let's just do it.
Yeah.
And then I go,
So what do we?
when mania is just some expertise that goes, hey man, by the way, that ain't right. Here's what's wrong with it. Now I decide what like, once we fix that, might be worth a little
I mean, it would be tough to tell without looking at what tune is in the bike to even know if it was tuned. If you don't see a tuner on the bike, chances are it hasn't been tuned.
Gotcha. Is that just something that's a 4 hour charge for you guys?
We would dyno tune it. It would be 4 hours, and then we'd
That's all over. It's pretty cool.
license, and then Mike would tune it
What are people asking? What kind of questions?
Well, nothing really.
for factory
There's
setup.
there's guys online that are asking
Decided
like
to
real
do the
specific
clean
stuff,
stick
and
conversion,
Roy's
over
been
the
responding to him
hydraulic.
like, you got to call the shop. And there was one that I told him to come back and ask. Some good stuff. A lot of it is like people here. Most of it's just kind of explaining the difference between stuff, showing them dyno charts and exhaust and what's good and
Yeah, there's
what's
some
not.
really great Andrews cams.
Let them actually see it on paper
for
so they
those,
can understand what we're talking about when we talk to them on the phone.
See, that's the thing is, I want stuff that
That's cool.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah, you're welcome, man.
We had to get the overload up to speed. Yeah, we just had to catch the overload up. He's out making people's dreams come true out in the Coctagon.
happens.
So we're back, yeah?
We're back.
Jamie's joining us. So, camera 1, and then camera 2, camera 1, camera 2. Yeah, and with the amazing technology that Randy has at his disposal, we can switch between either one.
Very cool.
Are you live cutting?
Hell yeah. Oh yeah, he's even got headphones on. So while we were on the break, there was somebody that
Yeah,
asked
we
a
gotta-
question on YouTube, and Roy brought it up to me. So
Yeah, we got a question from the Cherry Bomb.
the cherry bomb.
Yeah, and they said, I have a 107 with a Redshift 468 with Power Vision target tune. What compression 124 can I add without doing heads and throttle body?
On that cam?
None.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of why we had talked about fielding the question.
So we're going to go back to what we talked about before, where you get to the point where you're going to be able to move so much air that the cam can no longer keep up with the efficiency of the engine. Even with stock heads and throttle body, when you get into 124 cubic inches, you're going to need to move into a cam that's more in the 475 range, which is an awesome setup. If you do a 124 with an SNS 475, we've done, and you get good exhaust. I don't know what exhaust he has on there, but when we're running like D&D Billicats, we're getting 135 horsepower, 145 foot-pounds of torque with stock heads.
Yeah, in the lower 2,000 RPM range.
Yeah,
you know,
it's awesome.
like 2,500. It's a stump puller. So 475 cam with a 124 is just a stump puller with stock heads.
And on stock heads, I think you could probably even get away with the 521.
Yeah.
You run the 521, you get a little bit more. You'll probably decrease the torque, pick up the horsepower a little bit, and it'll run pretty flat. It's not going to have that big giant arc that tapers off on the big end. It'll carry out a little bit further. Beyond that, I wouldn't, without heads and a throttle body, I probably wouldn't go any bigger than that.
Yeah. Agreed.
But a 468's not going to be your favorite choice. Sorry.
But
Well,
if
we
you
had also kind of talked about, and you get a lot of the questions on here, you know, we talk so much about the 114s, the 117s, the 124s, and the 128s and all of that. But what about the guys that are just riding a 107 that, you know, don't have $10,000 to throw at a motor and are looking for, you know, the best bang for your buck, if you will, out of just, say, a cam and an exhaust and a tune? And I think it's the question that we all get the most when it comes down to it is, what can I get away with? What can I do without going absolutely insane, and everything's still.
Well, we answered that in our cam shootout video number 2. Cam shootout video number 2 is basically a stock compression motor with all the different manufacturers' cams we'd recommend, with several different exhausts. We do a couple different exhausts in that video.
2 exhausts.
2 exhausts. So if you don't want to throw a ton of money into it, maybe you already have the exhaust, an intake, and a tuner on it. You could throw a cam in it. Maybe you haven't done anything, and that's what you can add to it. But that video probably shows you, without getting into pistons, what cams we would recommend.
Yeah, we run 4 different cams.
Can I follow up with a question on that?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Hold on.
Hang on.
Give him the mic. It's town hall style, so.
This may follow up to a question you had, Roy, or that you just asked. And this may be asking for a friend.
That might be me.
It may be you. If I just new to motorcycling, I bought a touring bike, say I had $5,000 to spend, and I'm doing more long distance touring, I want to travel with my wife, and I've got a 107 or 114, what would you suggest? I've got $5,000 to spend, stage 1, stage 2, exhaust, what does that look like?
So $5,000 on an M8 is pretty much going to do a stage 2 for you. Intake, exhaust, tune with a cam. So that cam shootout video number 2, where we have the 460 range cams, we do 465 to like a 470.
No.
468 I think is where we topped out.
We did the 462. We did the 462, 464, and 2 465 cams, the SNS and the fueling.
And that's what y'all would recommend?
Well, no. It really depends. Like you said, 2 up most of the time.
Yes.
I would probably recommend what RPM range?
Probably average touring is somewhere 2,700 to 3,000.
That's on the bottom. I would put the SNS 465 in it. Maybe the Redshift 468.
This chart is a 107 with a SNS 465 and our 212 exhaust with Chromework slip-ons.
Yep.
So this isn't the final product. I tuned out some of these dead spots, but a 107, he's already at 116 foot-pounds of torque and 94 horsepower, and that was the third run, the third pull.
Okay,
for your 2-up touring, I mean, all your power starts at 2,000 and runs to 3,500.
Okay, so that would be a good average
Yeah.
upgrade for a new or slightly used bike that y'all would recommend to do.
Or just if you most of your riding is like pleasure riding, you and your wife go and you hit the back roads and you just want to have ample twist power, and you don't want a rocket, but you want something that will get out of the way of anything that comes in front of you and passes cars. It's a perfect setup.
Awesome, that's what I
To
need. Thank
qualify
you.
that too, the like we talked about earlier, the exhaust systems on this is critical. These bikes are very, very sensitive to the exhaust that you choose. I would limit that decision to something along the lines of the full sack head pipe with a quality slip-on. We've run obviously the Chrome Works, the S&S. We've even run some Cobra Neighbor Haters, maybe not the best they've run. Stay away from the zombie baffle, the big wide open, super loud X whatever. Don't run it. Like stick to a pipe that has, about a 2 1/4, 2 1/2, preferably baffleable. That's going to keep the velocity in the muffler high. Once we get, those big giant 4 1/2s wide open, and then first thing people do is like, oh, I'm going to yank the baffle out because it sounds cool. Your torque drops like a rock.
But what you're describing, there will be some sound and a little bit of rumble that you'll be able to feel.
Absolutely.
Okay.
On those cam jobs, if you want a little bit more sound, we've had good results with the D&D 2-in-1, which is also on that video that we've done. So if you go back to that cam video, some of the stuff Aaron broke down with what size bike, what kind of riding you're doing, we go into depth of each one of those cams and how we would utilize them. So that would be our cam shootout 2.
Okay, awesome.
And then on a low compression setup, the D&D is not that loud. It's really not. When you put compression on it, the D&D gets quite a bit louder.
Very cool. Thank you.
Oh, and also I forgot.
We need like Led Zeppelin in the background.
That Sidewinder 2-in-1.
So,
really nice exhaust.
let's see. They said they got a 124 S&S build with heads, throttle body, 550 cam, and a Two Brothers Racing 2-in-1 competition S exhaust, and they're bottlenecking the exhaust.
Yes, absolutely.
And I kind of
exhaust
saw
has gotta
that,
go.
and yeah, I mean, we see this a lot with people that buy stuff they think looks good or that they, are told is good, by people they think are reputable. And they end up spending a lot of money on a motor like that. That guy didn't cut any corners,
Well, there's two problems with that exhaust, really. A small primary, a short primary, and that's going to cause reversion issues in the pipe and flow issues on that pipe at that displacement. You could take that pipe and put it on a 107 or a 114. It might make that situation better, but the shape of the curve is probably going to be pretty close to the same. It's not going to fall on its face, I don't think, quite as bad on the big end. But when you put it on something and that high of a displacement, it's going to amplify that situation.
And it can't handle the volume. What would you run? I would run.
What's the budget?
Depending on what the budget is, and I mean he's got heads the full system. So if he wanted a nasty 2-in-1, I'd probably run the D&D high output. I mean you're gonna wake up your neighbors with that thing. We'll pull that out and start it in a few minutes, but you're gonna want something that's gonna have long primaries and a long muffler collection so that you can keep the exhaust pressure high, but has high enough flow that it doesn't force it to push the air out.
And if this is
Oh, it's street bob. So put the thrashing pipe on it.
Then I would do the thrashing AR pipe.
Yep.
Yeah, and it'll still have that real aggressive look. And we have one of those in here too.
Yeah, and if you're a touring bike,
that way.
the D&D, the bigger D&D, the new one, is awesome, but it's loud. If you're going to do some long riding, that pipe is going to wear you out. Super loud. So something that works really well that's calmer would be your Chromeworks.
The Chromeworks 212.
That pipe gets almost a similar numbers, real close to the same exact numbers, but the decibels are half of what you're going to be hearing. So if you're going on a long ride, that's going to be a better setup for you. When you have a short exhaust, you're taking your graph over here and you're shortening your curve on these shorter exhausts because your torque isn't coming in where it should be. On a short pipe, your torque is going to be down here. You're missing this half of the graph. And we see with all the short pipes, the TBRs, the shorter the exhaust is, the more you're losing torque numbers over the curve. So if we give you a different exhaust, the right exhaust for your motor build, we can have the same numbers those exhausts are doing later on in the RPMs, but we can gain this back. If I have a 120R motor in my bike, we've done like 3 or 4 different exhaust systems. We had a D&D on there. We had good torque with the D&D. We put a shorter pipe on, something we were experimenting with. We got pretty much the same end numbers, maybe 2 horsepower more in the end, right? But the bottom sucked. I hated riding it. It was for the racetrack. I didn't like taking off.
It was loud too, you said.
Super loud. So then, what did we put on it?
That fueling custom.
We had a custom pipe fueling made for us, and we had the same top end numbers, but it had the most torque on the bottom. So the right pipe.
You had that curve?
Yeah, we got it.
Did you go over it already? Mm-hmm. So the right pipe can make all the difference in how the bike feels. Same motor, same everything else, 3 different exhausts. So the first one's a D&D in the red, the Borzilla. This felt great. It felt good. We put a 2-in-1 Burns on here, and it was just horrible coming out of the hole. You had to slip it, didn't like riding it. In town, stoplights weren't good. And then the fueling pipe, it's like a new bike, just with exhaust and the right tune on it. So depending on what you do, if you don't have the right exhaust pick with a twin cam or an M8, and the M8s are pickier than the twin cam, you can really help your motor or really hurt your motor. And for most riders, we experience 90% of riders are going to want the torque down low. Because if you have to slip the clutch coming out of the hole every time, it's just not as fun. You want something real snappy right out of the hole.
And thank you again, by the way, everybody that's asking questions and watching.
Yeah, keep them coming.
Watching online. Yeah,
It's fun.
It's super fun to be able to answer them. I know sometimes the news isn't nice, but you already know that something's wrong.
You're going to have to get a problem.
You know.
With that being said, we can jump into some bills.
Yeah, you want to? Sure.
Yeah, pull that thing up.
So can you get around to the other side?
So,
Well, we couldn't hear. We had music on, but we couldn't hear.
just like
when
little
people were
lights on,
talking.
there's nothing crazy.
He just wants the voices to stop.
A little more human than human.
It is Pantera Friday. Pantera Friday? Yeah. It's only Pantera Friday on Friday. So this is Badass Mike Monzi's 124. It started life as a 107. It's got 124 Revolution cylinders. It's got our heads. It has an HPI throttle body and air cleaner. And this is a Thrashin AR pipe that they custom built for us. So it's got a little bit higher, a little larger collectors so that it can handle the higher volume of the motor. And again, you know, some of this stuff, they don't make a lot of it, especially for softails. For softails, they don't make as much as they do for baggers yet. So. Yeah, this is a Fueling 521 cam in this guy. And it's right around 144 foot-pounds of torque and 135 horsepower on a little softail. And You know, you can tell the exhaust has a really great note. It's robust, but it's not overwhelmingly loud. But it's got a really nice bark when you hit it. And this is a fun bike to ride. We've also got some suspension work that's into this bike, and I think maybe next month we'll do one on suspension if everybody wants to come back.
Yeah. So we got the RWD rear shock on it. It's
Yeah.
really close.
So there's one of them.
You want next?
You want to pull Snows?
Sure.
True story, baby. Yeah, that last guy was forced to buy that bike too.
Yeah, he was. He absolutely was. So yeah, this is Snows 128. Again with an HPI throttle body and intake, and our heads Revolution 128 cylinders. This has a SNS 550 cam, and this has the brand new just out D&D. What do they call it? Big bore. And
It's the same part number as a regular billet cat, but they've terminated the sequence of numbers with a BB to indicate it's the big bore baffle. The cool thing about this pipe too is the ghost pipe is interchangeable with the standard billet cat. So if you have a bike, don't fear that you're gonna have to throw away your expensive ghost pipe. Nope, it works. You put this pipe on, your ghost pipe lives on the system if you are running a ghost pipe. We also did some really nice anodizing work on this. Same with Monzi's setup. Had the throttle body and the backing plates anodized. Just nice little custom touch. Makes it look super clean. Start it?
yeah,
So this exhaust
you don't
should
want to
come-
probably back up with the microphones. 'Cause it's gonna blow the. It's gonna max the. speakers.
All motors might not sound like this, but this one.
Yeah. That's a SNS 550 cam in that one.
This isn't worn. It's on high idle. Both of these two bikes, when you get off the high idle, then this one picked up a really badass on the look too. It's just cold right now. That's why they wanted that one too bad either. But it's probably eating a little bit more than I prefer. But yeah, they sound super, super nice. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, like I was explaining, if anybody didn't hear that, the bike is a little bit cold right now, so it's on high idle. It has a substantial lope with this 550 cam when it's warmed up and doing what it should be doing. Mike, grab it. Pull
Yeah, might as well pull that one. And then maybe like we can get that other one turned around while we're doing this one. Well, yeah, we can start it. Oh yeah, it runs. So this is a.
But it's new.
Yeah, so this is a cool little project that came our way. The owner Tom, he got in an accident and got some insurance money. And while he was healing, he came to us and said, "Man, I want to take this old Dyna that's kind of like it's like a club Dyna, right? Where it's kind of belonged to a few different people that he knows or something. It's got some history to it, and it wasn't in the best of shape when we got it. And now we've kind of refurbished it and put some cool gold accents. This is another thrashing pipe. It was a 96, now it's a 110 with R heads. This has an SNS 585 cam, the thrashing AR reversion pipe, and a Mikuni HSR 45 carburetor. And again, like a bunch of suspension work and brakes and all that stuff. So. carbonators. What?
Oh, the tempering the pipe.
Oh. Yeah, I should go over our secret recipe. That's a good idea. Well, you know, with exhaust, I like to heat it up slowly. So you get it hot during your heat cycles and then let it cool down. You heat it up and let it cool down slowly 4 or 5 times. And then don't get on it with an untuned motorcycle and go ride it for 3.5 hours and it won't turn purple. So you can have the exhaust. This is as dark as it'll get when we're done with it.
So the exhaust here is what we're talking about, how we get this gold color on the exhaust and it slowly tapers off. And the gold kind of ends where the muffler starts to go in is the heat cycles. Along with that, after it's put on the bike, please get all your fingerprints off your exhaust, wipe it down. We're using alcohol on a cotton rag, wiping down the pipe thoroughly before we start it for the first run. Any fingerprints or anything you have on this guy before you start it, once you heat cycle it and it gets hot, you're going to burn it into the pipe. It's going to be there for a while. Even after you wash it, you got to be careful. You got to dry it off and stuff if you're going to run a stainless steel pipe.
Get Joe's? All right. Here, hold that.
I'm just on the mic.
All right, this is Joe's Fat Boy, much beloved Fat Boy. This is a 128 cubic inch D-counterbalanced bike. It has our heads on it. At the time we were building this bike, and it's been in and out of the shop with Joe quite a bit, and he's been super patient about it. It was very, very early in the development, not only of the bottom end platform and what we can get away with doing, but at that time too, there wasn't a pipe made that would work for this wide tire bike. So we set off and actually designed and built this exhaust system in-house. It's a one-off piece. We had some help from a company called Profab in North Carolina that did a little bit of trickery for us down in this area that we weren't able to do fabrication-wise ourselves. It is in every respect an anti-reversion pipe, much like what you saw on Monzi's bike. The difference is the chamber for the anti-reversion is kind of hidden under the wrap here a little bit, but it does live right in this area. There's an anti-reversion chamber in there. There's also an anti-reversion chamber down in this area. We've got that little Venturion that comes up. The anti-reversion on a bike this big with heads that flow this big helps to lift the torque curve. You find when you get a tremendous reversion wave back up in the head, it makes a big torque dip, and we're trying to get away from that. This bike sounds absolutely amazing. Probably one of my favorite sounding bikes I've ever heard. It is an SNS 550 cam set at 11.1 or 11.3 now. 11.3 to 1 compression. Has our SNS head bolts, full SNS cam chest, and Mike switched it over to this Extreme air cleaner, and it picked up some nice power. This thing breathes so hard, it just needs every bit of it. Fire it up. Take a listen. It literally is a skirt lifter.
Yeah, it wraps a little
Skirt lifter.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is just amazing. That thing's killer. Really proud of that. So this pipe, the way it sits right now, is mild steel. At some point, we'll probably end up doing one like it in stainless, but for ease of fabrication and usage of the material, inability to really properly back purge and all that while we were TIG welding this together, we went with mild steel, and then we Cerakoted it inside and out, and then wrapped it to protect it. So this bike is what, 143,
148 horsepower, 153 foot-pounds.
Yeah, 148, 153 to the tire. And that is on that rear tire's got to weigh, 18.
We're going to get a carbon fiber
Yeah.
tire.
We're going to do a carbon fiber wheel pretty soon, then we'll find out exactly how much it weighs
And then we'll see.
and what it picks up. He's going to do it.
And,
Yeah.
and Joe has been super awesome because, he just lets us experiment with it. And, we had to build the exhaust in our off time, and it kind of got into our busy season, so it slowed way down, and he's been super patient, which is pretty awesome.
Oh, another cool thing about this bike too, we were involved in the development with V-twin power. There was not a compensator delete that existed for this bike until we decided that we wanted to do it. We did a lot of measuring and checking offsets and then communicating back and forth. And V-twin power produced the very first compensator delete for this bike, sent us the prototype, which we test fitted before they did their hardening. They did their hardening, sent it back to us, we put it on the bike, and now it's in production. So, it's another testament to your patience and letting us kind of develop and work, because there's several parts on this bike. I think they're the first one-offs that may never go on a bike like that again, and some now that are in production.
We should talk about the comp delete and what happens when you have a big motor like one of these and you decide to take your compensator off. All right, so when you do a comp delete, there's a couple other things you should probably plan on. Tensioner, clutch basket. So what happens is you're able to hit it a lot harder. Who's on? You're able to hit it a lot harder when you take the comp out, because the comp has a little bit of give. So when you remove the comp on a big motor like this and you're hitting it a lot harder, you're hitting that clutch basket a lot harder. So if you're not putting in a beefier clutch basket, we're seeing these things grenade, just break in half, break all over. So there's a couple things there. Then you fix your clutch and you're running a belt. Well, belts are made for pants, so you're going to destroy a belt. So a couple things you might want to look at doing when you're about to do one of these and you're going to take your compensator off. Save up, do the whole job. You need to chain drive it. You need to have a nice clutch setup in it, and then do the comp delete. Don't do the comp delete first and then go on a big ride, because you got some problems later down the road. Just a little bit of stuff we run into when we do a lot of these big motor builds.
So earlier, I'm going to switch gears a little bit. Is this on? So there's a gentleman back here in the back that came, and he said, well, I see that this is a cam plate, but I don't really know what the difference between this is and the stock one, and why I should go with this one. So I ran back and I got one of our takeoff stock cam plates. So when you look at these two side by side, you can see that obviously, the manufacturers, not just Harley, but every manufacturer, they have to keep costs down. So most of their parts are stamped or forged, and they are built within a certain spec of tolerances so that they can build them quickly, and in their stock configuration, they will have longevity. Once you exceed the stock application, it's not a bad idea to upgrade the parts that support the system by going to more robust billet aluminum plates and parts. And as you can see, the stock cam plate, all the cam rides in the top and the crank rides in the bottom, and then there's gears and a chain that connect the two. This rides in the parent material. This one rides in bronze bushings, which are also replaceable, which is one of the things that is that why we prefer S&S. We have yet to have one fail. I don't know if I've ever had to replace the bushings in an S&S plate on a twin cam or on an M8. But if there is some sort of a failure, like a cam journal goes out or whatever and starts to put excessive pressure, you don't have to replace the whole plate. You can just replace the bushings. So what you're buying is you're buying more rigidity, you're buying better lubrication, and you're buying you're lessening the possibility of a failure because of the extreme environment that the engine starts to run in. Like he said on this bike, I mean, there wasn't even any exhaust for it, and a lot of these questions are the exhaust is such a problem. Well, when you're having that issue on the top end, the same stuff is going on the bottom too. The pressure inside the motor is bigger. The oil's moving at a higher pressure, well, should be. So you've got to be able to get it in and out as fast and as efficiently as possible to keep the components clean, lubricated, and cool.
Same thing with the pump too. Same thing with the pump.
Yeah.
So that's the play. I mean, you get the pump. So I mean, just look at the way they're machined. There's a lot more that goes into this. Where when a manufacturer is trying to produce a pump, they have a certain dollar amount they want to spend in it. When you can spend your own money and you can spend $700 just on oil pump and plate, the difference you're getting is significant. I mean, this does the job for a stock motor. Even this pump in a stock motor, well worth it. If you plan on having your bike for a long time and you want it to run good, this thing is good for any motor, but it's definitely for a bigger motor. But the thing is, when you don't have to worry about a cost because you're making thousands of them, and now it's only for your specialty vehicle, they're not really sparing any costs to get the best products out there. And we've done a couple comparisons. Both pumps are great.
Yeah.
They're both really good. So we recommend either one of them. We seem to be running a little more of the S&S. But then some customers have preferences, and we do run in the feelings a lot as well.
Right.
So it's up to you guys. It's like Chevy and Ford.
And we did a video a while back that goes through like the stock, the S&S, and the fueling pump and plate, so you can really get an in-depth kind of lesson on how all the internals work. So we don't really need to go into that here, but you know, it's a great question, and it does help explain why you would make the investment. Because it's not cheap. I mean, it's $700, like you said.
Compensator, we talked about that a second ago. Not sure if everybody is aware, but the factory compensator setup, like Mike was talking about before, is a ramp setup with springs. Sits in here like that. There is a very, very heavy set of springs back in there, and these ride up these ramps on those springs.
Spring pack.
And the spring pack. They're dished, so a lot like a diaphragm spring on a clutch. That's where you get your pressure from. It, on the flywheel, will absorb some of that force and ride up that ramp, pushing on that spring, and take some of the hammering effect out of the bottom of the flywheel. If you have a welded flywheel, I think it's totally okay. If you don't, maybe questionable depending on what your power output is, my feeling. What you end up with is a solid unit, like that. So now there's no more give, especially if you tend to lug the motor, and if you're making a tremendous amount of torque, low RPM, you're going to hammer on that thing and it will tend to break parts. So great for reducing, rotational mass and not wasting power and putting energy into a spring, but getting it and putting it all to the rear wheel. But you got to be careful with them a little bit. And that is in this bike.
So on
got them in several we built.
If you want a nice cush ride and you're riding with your wife and you guys are touring, you want a compensator. It's only for these bigger motor builds when you're running hard and this is your play bike, you'll do a comp delete. So it's not for everyone. Just because you have a bike, you put a cam in, don't just go and slap a comp delete in there. That's for someone that's really playing with the bike, pushing it hard, knows it, because it's going to downshift different, it's going to upshift different, it's going to take off different, your clutch is going to feel different. So that's for the big boy builds.
And the clutches too, we've had backlash issues running a comp delete you have to be aware of too.
Yeah.
So
On the slipper clutch.
Yeah, the newer slipper clutch models, we've had to switch up the tensioner unit that we go with. We have had a good experience so far with a hydraulic adjustable that has worked really good. I think the results are probably the same with a Hayden or something along those lines, but we opted for the hydraulic unit. It's literally a unit that runs just like your normal primary tensioner would run, but it's got in the bottom an orifice that pulls oil up into it with a catch and then a pressure brake. So it will draw oil up into it as the chain's vibrating. It will put a certain amount of pressure on it, hold that pressure on it. So as your primary heats and cools, things expand and contract. It will maintain a constant pressure on your primary, and it doesn't seem to be as affected by the kickback of the slipper clutch. It runs great.
Yeah, it takes a lot of the noise out too. I mean, it is a nice upgrade. Any questions online?
How about in the house?
Roy, is there nothing?
I noticed the super push hanging up behind it. Haven't heard anybody talk about it yet. What is the benefit of running that?
It's better.
Well, it's basically along the lines of when you do the compensator. It's just it's a more robust, positive engagement for your rear pulley on baggers. It's good.
Less gear, right?
Less good. More meat. I don't know. I suppose maybe we're
Winding down.
yeah.
Ask away. We're here. We want to talk.
He wants to talk. No. Do you?
Does anybody have any questions they want to ask while we're here? I mean, doesn't have to involve motorcycles. What you got, man? Yeah. What you got, man?
Personal preference between the Chromeworks exhaust versus I believe S&S has one that's
The Mark 45.
Yep.
Yeah, those are very similar, and both of them are great. We tend to use the Chromeworks because we have a great relationship with them, and we have an assortment of different baffles that I use when I'm tuning, depending on what the setup is. And we pulled some of them out earlier. So neither of these baffles were actually manufactured for these mufflers, but we buy them from Chromeworks in bulk because they really help keep the bottom end pressure up. And the S&S is a great muffler. It's got a quiet baffle, which is this little guy that you can put in there, and it really doesn't change the decibel level that much. But for like a stock 107 or a stock 114, it's just doing like say an S&S 465 or a Andrews 462 or a Fueling 465 cam. Putting these little baffles in really increases your bottom end response. So you can you can start your torque curve at 2,000 instead of 2,250 or 2,500 RPMs. But we prefer the Chromeworks because we have such an extensive baffle system that we can use for them. So I can almost tailor the muffler to whatever we're putting in the motor.
And you do quite often you make baffle changes.
Yeah.
Setup for setup. Within those baffles, I'm not talking about just taking a baffle and sliding it in. He'll alter a baffle for a certain combination. So we've got it pretty finely tuned.
Now there are some customers that want more sound and a little bit better performance. If we're just going off of sound and you weren't worried about the performance, S&S would have a deeper tone.
Yeah.
It would have a deeper tone. So for a guy that's looking for a little bit more tone out of the muffler than necessarily performance, and the S&S does well performance-wise, just not as tunable as these, then we would push you towards the S&S muffler. Those MK45s, which are on the wall over there, great muffler. We run them a lot.
Yeah, most of it's going to be your preference. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, especially for a stock configuration, that sense of a deep run
rumble. It's not too loud when you get on it or anything, but it's nice. So these are just a little bit below what the S&S is going to put out.
But we talked earlier too about foundation building. We talked earlier too about foundation building, right? Where an opportunity to buy parts for your bike that you'll be able to carry forward with you and build, as you go forward. That muffler is going to give you more ability to grow with your build because of the ability to so drastically change the baffling system with it. You can take that pipe and put one baffle in it and run it on a stock compression, 107. You can put a head pipe on that. Then you can take that and go to a 124, put a bigger head pipe on it, change the baffle again, and that pipe is still that muffler will still work. And it'll give you the utmost in performance from the bottom all the way up, provided it's baffled properly. That's a really nice advantage to that muffler. That's one of the reasons we like it so much is, customer comes to us, they are expecting a certain level of performance, and we can use that and get it no matter what setup it's on.
If you're looking for sound, the D&D is probably the best out there for anything you're going to run. 117 or below would be a standard D&D is what we'd run. Great sound, they run good torque. It's a good setup. It's more money, the D&Ds, especially if you have the ghost pipe on there, you're talking around $2,000. So it's a bigger investment, but by the time you buy a head pipe and you buy a pair of S&S's, which are around $700, you're relatively real close to the same. It's about a $600 to $700 swing between the two, but the D&D is a good note. What you got?
Anybody online? You guys questions? S&S Sidewinder question.
The side.
That's a question online. What do you think of the S&S Sidewinder?
That's a great pipe, and it sounds a lot like the Mark 45s. They also now have a falsie, as S&S calls it. So if you have the cutout bags on the newer, the special touring bikes, you can get a false pipe, so you're not plagued with the I can't run a 2-into-1 because there's going to be a hole on the other side. But the S&S and the D&D are real similar in performance, but the S&S is going to have a lower note, a little more of a rumble tone like the Mark 45 mufflers.
And that pipe also comes in a catalyst or non-catalyst version too.
Yeah, so if you're in an EPA compliant area, you can run it with a catalyst.
So if you are, like you just said, if you're in a spot where you gotta have a cat, you're in luck. You can run it.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, we were talking to the engineers at S&S, and we were talking to the engineers at S&S last year, and if you're running one of those smaller bore, not quite so on the edge setups, you're in luck because the catted pipe will actually help increase your torque a little bit. It's certainly not a detriment. It's not going to hurt the top end, and it helps lift the torque just a little bit. So it's a really, really nice pipe.
And we just delivered one today on a twin cam that we did it kind of had a hodgepodge build on it, and we kind of straightened some stuff out for the guy, and he had a different setup with a 2-into-1 and a 110 stage 4 tire shredder, and we took out the Screaming Eagle 259E cam and put in a Redshift 527 and the Sidewinder, and at 2,500 RPMs we gained 18 foot-pounds of torque, I think, and ended up with 121 foot-pounds of torque and 109 horsepower.
And it sounds great. The guy's main complaint was it was just too loud. Yeah. So picked up performance and improved the sound as well for him. Great. Perfect crime.
Cool.
Anybody else?
I think we're good to go.
Well, I want to touch on one thing before we leave. Warranty. Is this guy on? Can I?
Yeah.
Oh.
Get them both. Get another one.
Get
another microphone over here.
So warranty we deal with. A lot of customers are like, hey, I want to build this motor. I'm waiting for my factory warranty to expire. Just come see us. Don't worry about it expiring. If we build your motor, we're going to warranty the motor until your factory warranty runs out. So if you bought your bike today, you bring it to us, we build your motor, Mike wrenches on it, you pick out the parts of there, and we get put together. We're going to cover your motor. There's a couple things we have to do. Make sure you're able to have that warranty for the full 2 years of the Harley warranty. You have to service it per Harley's owner's manual. So 1,000-mile break-in, your 5K, 10K, 15K, and every 5,000 after that. We build your motor, you bring it to us, and you're out-of-state customer and you don't go to your local dealer for one of those services and you can't provide us a record and something happens, you're on your own. If you have all the records, it comes back to us, we get it in here, we'll fix it, we'll cover it, and that's 100%. That's not a deductible, anything. We cover our motors. We stand behind our work. A lot of customers ask us that. If you bought a Harley a year ago and you have a year left of your warranty and we build it, we'll warranty it until your factory warranty expires, so you'll have a year coverage on that warranty. But we got to make sure you're doing your servicing at a Harley-Davidson authorized dealer. That's kind of what sets us apart from anyone else. I got faith in our team, faith in what everyone here is doing. We have faith in our vendors and the products we're putting in these bikes, so we stand behind them. So that's a big thing we do that no one else is really touching. Someone else might be doing it. We just don't know of them.
And we also finance.
And we finance these things. You got some money saved up, you don't want to keep waiting? Call us. Call Aaron, this guy. He'll take care of you on that stuff. We got some cool options. We'll finance it for between 1 month to 36 months. We have several different options to get you taken care of.
What's the number, Aaron?
It's right here.
615-777-7775.
That's right. Well, thank you very much, everybody. I hope that we were able to answer questions and we were informative, and we really appreciate everybody coming out in person. I mean, we've got people from Chattanooga and Murfreesboro and all over the place, which is pretty cool. And Alabama. Yeah, we've got Joe from Alabama, maybe some others, and everybody that's on Indiana.
Yeah, we had a question from Australia earlier.
Australia. Yeah, it's pretty awesome. So we really appreciate everybody taking the time to listen to us ramble on.
Yeah, and I know we talked tonight too mostly about M8s. That's largely where our market is driven right now, but we got a lot of love for twin cam, Evo, Sportster. If you want to build on something like that, you know, your older twin cams that need conversions, call us up. We're familiar with it. We can fix it.
V-Rods.
Yeah.
You want to build a street, we got you covered. Anything else? That's why you started wearing those glasses, right?
Hey, it's awesome.
Wow.
Look at that look of like utter dissatisfaction on my face right there.
Stroking forks makes me feel good. What can I say?
We're going to get a bunch of awesome comments. I can't wait. Their glasses were... What else we got? That's it?
Next weekend, if you guys are here. Next weekend, if you guys are here, we're going to do our first scavenger hunt. We're going to go all through Nashville. I've got a lot of cool prizes. Just more stuff. I know the weather's cold. Doesn't matter. We still ride. We rode last night. He kind of saved me. Shouldn't be here. I should be in the hospital. How cold it was riding home. I was just in a hoodie.
I get free beers all of October from you now?
Yep.
Ooh, I like it. Ooh, it's on the record too.
Yeah, we got 13 more days. Yeah. But thanks, guys. Thanks for coming out. If there's any last-minute questions, anything last-minute online, we got a bunch of beer to drink and pizzas to eat. So thanks for joining us. Cool.
Now we turn the radio back on. Except you cut me off.
Oh, I did.
When last